And calculated killings of her two teenage daughters.
A jury at Cambridge Crown Court took just 35 minutes to find Rekha Kumari Baker guilty of the murder of 16-year-old Davina and 13-year-old Jasmine at her home in Streatham near Ely in 2007.
Prosecutors said she had carefully planned the killings to wreak havoc on her ex-husband. Matthew Hudson reports now.
A loving mother who went on to kill her daughters with a ferocity which is almost incomprehensible. Today, a jury took just 35 minutes to convict Rekha Kumari Baker of their murders. A crime which the police freely admit they do not understand. A crime which robbed her ex-husband of the children he loved. His reaction read out on the steps of the court by his brother.
More than 2 years have passed since the murder of my daughters. Justice has been delayed by Rekha Kumari Baker's attempts to avoid the consequences of her actions by claiming diminished responsibility through a fabricated defence of mental abnormality. The court has seen through this tissue of deceit.
Davina Baker was 16 when she died, her younger sister Jasmine just 13. They were repeatedly stabbed in their beds at their mother's home at Streatham near Ely in the early hours of June the 13th, 2007. Davina suffered 39 stab wounds, Jasmine 29. Even experienced police officers say it is the hardest case they have ever dealt with.
Davina and Jasmine were two innocent young girls who were murdered in the prime of their lives. In 25 years in the police service, this was one of the most disturbing and sickening crimes that I've had to investigate, and it's with some pride that I've worked with the officers who have been charged with the investigation. Needless to say, it has been a difficult and protracted investigation, but not just for the officers, but more importantly for the family of Davina and Jasmine.
In court, the prosecution said Kumari Baker murdered her girls to spoil her ex-husband's happiness. She planned it in detail, buying the knives at this Cambridge supermarket the day before they died. She then took the girls on an outing to the lakeside shopping centre to ensure they both slept at her house. After the killings, a note was found saying what she had done. Part of it read, "Sorry doesn't mean anything now. I killed my two beautiful daughters. I didn't want them to get hurt like I did." There was no evidence she had tried to kill herself after the murders. The Crown Prosecution Service believes she took out her inner rage on her daughters.
I think that it came out in court that it's not necessarily the case that women aren't capable of committing very serious and vicious acts out of anger and hate, and I think the jury saw that. They listened to what the psychiatrist said, and that it's not always the case. It is sometimes, and thankfully these are rare occurrences, but in this case that wasn't the case.
Kumari Baker's defence was that at the time of the killing she was suffering from a serious abnormality of the mind and was therefore guilty not of murder but of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. However, it took the jury only around half an hour of deliberations to decide that she was guilty of murder. Their school's head teacher paid this tribute to the two girls.
Davina was only here for a short while. She was a very lively girl, very well liked. Jasmine was here a little longer. She also very, very popular, had a very, very good group of friends, and she was very, very well liked. She worked hard, and it was a terrible tragedy.
Kumari Baker will be sentenced tomorrow. His Honour, Judge Bean, must decide how many years of a life sentence she must serve before she is eligible for release.
And we can go live now to Matthew Hudson outside Cambridge Crown Court. Matthew, did Rekha Kumari Baker show any emotion when the verdicts were read out?
From the moment she arrived in court 2 weeks ago up to and including when the verdicts were read out, she showed barely a flicker of emotion, which is really quite extraordinary when you consider the sheer magnitude of what she had done. It's almost hard to imagine what Davina's last few moments on earth must have been like, knowing that it was her own mother who was stabbing her to death. Perhaps mercifully, the evidence is that Jasmine died in her sleep before she could wake up.
Well, Matt, she's going to be sentenced tomorrow. Is that going to be the end of the case?
Well, yes, of course, the judge has to decide what her minimum tariff will be, but after that, as is so often the case in things like this, there will be an inquiry to see if more could have been done by GPs, by social services and by others to try and stop a tragedy like this from happening in the first place.
Matthew, thanks very much. A who's who of sporting greats gathered today to give thanks for the life of Sir Bobby Robson, 7 weeks after the footballing legend died from cancer.
Sir Alex Ferguson, current England manager Fabio Capello and Sir Bobby Charlton were among the 1,000 guests who filled Durham Cathedral.
Sir Bobby, of course, made his name as a manager at Ipswich, guiding them to FA Cup and UEFA Cup victories. Today, crowds gathered on the town's Cornhill to watch the service. Well, Donovan Blake is in Ipswich and joins us now. Donny, an emotional day then?
Yes, we're next to the Sir Bobby Robson statue outside the town's football ground, and yes, an emotional day for a lot of people because it was their opportunity to finally say farewell to Sir Bobby, even though today's events were to celebrate his life. His impact on this part of the world was huge, particularly in terms of the football, as any Ipswich fan will tell you, a golden era in terms of the football played here. But away from the game, he was very much revered and adored. No surprise then that supporters here and the club, which Sir Bobby called his baby, wanted to share in his special day. For 2 hours or so, the Cornhill in Ipswich virtually ground to a halt this afternoon. It had to be something special for that to happen. For many who gathered there, Sir Bobby Robson was something special. As the great and the good of football arrived at Durham Cathedral for the service to celebrate his life, hundreds gathered in front of the big screen 270 miles further south in Ipswich, where the event was relayed.
Put Ipswich on the map. That's what he was, and the things he'd done for this town that will never be repeated.
When I heard the news, it just felt like someone of your own family had died, because he'd been a part of Ipswich for so long.
He produced a wonderful football team, which had a lot of success. We played some fantastic football.
Around 1,500 people were at the service, led by the Dean of Durham Cathedral, the Very Reverend Michael Sadgrove, and punctuated with hymns and choral performances. Robson's widow, Lady Elsie, and their family were joined by close friends, most coming from the world of football, and some ready to share their special memories of one of the sport's true legends.
Bobby was indeed not just a brilliant leader of men who brought the absolute best out of his players, but also, without question, the single most enthusiastic and passionate man I've ever met in football.
Sir Bobby was asked once why he had set up his foundation. He said, "It is like when a friend asks you for help. Do you walk away?" We are here today to give thanks for and celebrate the life of a true gentleman who never walked away.
Robson's career took him around the world as manager of England and as a European club coach. But his time at Ipswich was where it took off. His 13 years at the club was arguably the most memorable in their history, from the turbulent late 60s and early 70s to that FA Cup win at Wembley in 1978, his first major trophy, and their success in the UEFA Cup 3 years later, the highlight of more than a decade of regular European football. Exciting times for those involved.
It's 40 years next month since I actually first met him as a 15-year-old spotty kid coming down from Carlisle, and you know, I'll never ever forget the guy, obviously, but you know, people ask me what was he really like. He wasn't a manager, he was a father figure, you know, to all the players.
It seemed appropriate that the service should last around 90 minutes, culminating with a rendition of The Last Post, and finally ending with a performance of Nessun Dorma, the song associated with Italia 90, where England and Robson's World Cup hopes ended in the semi-finals. A few tears were shed by some as they continued to remember him, but one thing is for sure, Sir Bobby Robson will never be forgotten.
Well, a little earlier I spoke to our ITV News colleague in the North East, Ian Payne, a town supporter and former Suffolk boy himself who attended the service. I began by asking him what it had been like to be there.
Becky, it was an incredible experience, very emotional. We wondered if it might be a sombre occasion, but it was very much a celebration of Sir Bobby's life. And, well, the guest list, one of the players commented on the way out, you could feel quite a team. And I'm sure that Bobby would have loved to have been the manager as well. But it really was an occasion that made you sit back, reflect, and realise the magnitude of what was happening and the extent to which Bobby was revered by so many and everybody who knew him.
people here were immensely fond of Sir Bobby. Was the affection the same in the north, or do you think there are slightly different memories?
I'm standing here in the north, so I suppose I have to say double it. We know how much Bobby is respected and highly valued in Ipswich. And people in East Anglia think of him as one of theirs. Here in the northeast, of course, he's very much one of ours. And Bobby was far more than just a footballing figure. He was kind of the father figure for the region, if you like, beyond sport. Somebody incredibly well respected, and we all know how fine the statue of Bobby. I have a maquette version here. That looks great outside Portman Road. There is now a lot of calls up here for a similar honour to be bestowed upon Bobby and his family, and a statue like this, maybe St James's Park or somewhere else, would be a very fitting tribute.
It would indeed. Thanks ever so much, Ian.